The Diamondbacks have made the playoffs exactly 7 times in their 28 seasons and have only been to 2 consecutive postseasons once in their history. So, what changes do the Diamondbacks need to make in order to see the postseason in 2026 and beyond?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, the show where we talk nothing but the D-backs Monday through Friday. Thank you so much for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every single day. I'm your host, Dane Biggs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We are going to be talking about what exactly the Diamondbacks need to do in order to make it to the postseason in 2026, because they've gotten very close 3 years in a row. One of them, they did make it. So they were right on the edge 3 years in a row. So had everything gone our way, not even everything, had just a few more things gone our way, we would be looking at 3 consecutive postseason appearances, which would be wild and would be the best that we've ever had in our history. Granted, they'd be wild cards spots, but I mean, I think we'll take it, But today we're going to be talking about a quick history of Diamondbacks playoffs experiences. And then we're going to be talking about the stats of the current playoff teams and kind of see where we line up in that field. And that really, what I've found is it shows really where we need to improve, and not just like, well, the pitching. Yeah, of course, the pitching, but it kind of shows exactly where we need to be looking. And then finally, I'm going to have a handful of thoughts about moves that we ought to be making in this postseason, specifically to make it to the postseason in 2026, because the competition is fierce. And I think that we need to make the postseason. That absolutely needs to be just our hard, fast goal. And if Torey Lovullo does, if we don't make the postseason this year, Torey Lovullo's out. And if we don't make the postseason this year, there's a good chance that Mike Hazen is going to be out. So they are going to be working very, very hard. He may not be out this season, but he's not going to be. He may not get a contract extension in 2028 or after that. So a lot is riding on this season for a lot of people. And so they're going to be doing everything they can. However, they're in a rough spot because they have a lot of players on their payroll right now and on their roster that they kind of can't do anything with because of injuries. So that puts them in a real tight spot. We're going to be starting 2026 with one arm and one foot tied behind our back. On the right arm and the left foot are tied together, and we're hobbling. That's, if you could imagine that, very, very uncomfortable. But the Diamondbacks are at their best when they're the underdogs, when they're kind of dismissed. So that could be exactly what the D-backs need. But anyway, let's talk about a quick history of the Diamondbacks and their appearances in the playoffs. So let's actually really quick. The Diamondbacks made it to the playoffs 7 times, once in 1999 in their second year of franchise history. 1999, 2001, and 2002, the only consecutive appearances in the playoffs in our history. 2007, 2011, 2017, 2023. So let's dissect these a little bit. 1999, the Diamondbacks were the National League West champions. They won the division with 100 wins, their most in franchise history. That was the second in the majors. They had 908 runs, which was the first in the National League, 1,566 hits, which was second in the National League. So offense was killing it. And they allowed 676 runs, which was third in the National League. They had a team ERA of 3.77 and a strikeout rate of 7.35 per game, which both of those were second in the majors as well. So the 1999 team was doing, I mean, they got 100 wins for a reason. Their hitting and their pitching both were phenomenal. They, again, that's 908 runs scored in the season. I'm trying to think of the last team that did that. It was probably the Dodgers in 2017 or something like that. But very, very impressive year, and absolutely deserved to make the playoffs. 2001, they won the NL West again and also won the World Series, in case you didn't know. They had 92 wins, which is slightly less, but that was still third in the National League. 818 runs, which was nearly 100 runs less than in 99, but it was still third in the National League. Nearly 1,500 hits, also third in the National League. They allowed 677 runs, which was just one more than in 1999. So virtually the same. And that was this year second in the National League. And their ERA just above that other was 3.87. And their strikeout rate was 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. Both of those second in the NL. So pitching was incredible. And Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling alone made that year for the pitching absolutely incredible. And then the offense was still absolutely incredible. So obviously they got the easy win. Not easy win, but they clearly, you look on paper, they made the playoffs easily. The next year they improved in a lot of aspects. They got more wins, 98 wins. They had almost exactly the same number of runs, 819 runs, which was one more than the year before. 1471 hits, so actually slightly less hits, and then slightly less runs allowed as well, with 674. Their ERA went up a little bit, 3.93, but their strikeout rate continued to go up, 8.11 strikeouts per 9 innings. Some interesting outliers here that I wanted to point out was that in 2001, with virtually the same number of runs allowed, they were the second best in the NL. In 2002, with virtually the same amount, I think they actually had 3 less. They were 5th in the NL. So 2002, teams were not allowing as many runs, apparently. That's kind of interesting. And I'm throwing those stats in there too because the league changes so much. And so if we go, well, we had way less runs in this year, well, it was still one of the best because the record, it gives context. Let's take a look. 2007. So 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, the Diamondbacks go on a big free fall and did not return to the postseason until 2007, when they were once again National League West champions. They had won 90 games, which was first in the National League. It's funny, again, 100 wins was second in the league, 92 was third in the National League, 98 was second in the National League, 90 wins was first in the National League. So the National League, I guess, didn't win as much in 2007. So that's kind of funny. But this year was very interesting because they had 712 runs scored, which was 26th out of 30 that year. They had one of the worst offenses. They had 1,350 hits, which was the second lowest number of hits by any team. I was like, whoa, the Diamondbacks offense was not there in 2007. So why the heck did they make it? Well, look at this. They allowed 732 runs, which was 20 runs more than they got. They had a negative 20 run differential, and their ERA was 4.13, which is the worst so far. The next worst was 3.93. So we're now in the 4s, and that was 4th in the NL. So I guess, the National League just really wasn't as competitive this year, apparently. And their strikeout rate was only 6.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. The reason, though, why this team made it to the playoffs and won the division wasn't because they were like the best team easily. You look at them and they're like, wow, these guys are crushing it, like the 98, 2001, 2002 team. But this team was clutch. They were able to win nearly every close game that they found themselves in. So if it was a 1-run, 2-run game, they would win it, and then they'd get blown out by losing by 10 in the next game. So that's kind of how that one went. But they did end up getting the most wins in the National League and made it to the playoffs. The next time they made it to the playoffs was 4 years later in 2011, where they were once again, and for the final time so far, division champions. They had 94 wins, so more than 2007, though this time they were only third in the National League. They had 731 runs, which was fourth in the National League, and 1357 hits, which was much lower at 10th in the National League. So they were the bottom 2/3 of just hits. They allowed 662 runs, so they still had a positive run differential by a fair margin. It looks like about 70, 69. Nice. But that was 8th in the National League, and their ERA was 3.80, which was 9th, and their strikeout rate was 6.6 in 9 innings, which was the 13th in the National League. They were the third worst strikeout pitchers in the National League, and yet they still won the division. And again, the reason for this is because of close games. They were able to win those tight games and claw their way into 94 wins. So that seemed to be kind of the way to do it between that golden age of 99 to 2002 and the current age we find ourselves in with Torey Lovullo. That was kind of the Kirk Gibson, Bob Melvin duo, I guess, that we found ourselves in. That was kind of the way we made it. In 2017, a whole 6 years later, Torey Lovullo's first year as manager, the Diamondbacks rebound big time. 2016 was a very rough year and won 93 games, one less than in 2011. However, was still third in the National League. We only made the wild card spot, but had an incredible year otherwise. Again, third in the National League, and which means we had a better record than one of the division winners. We scored 812 runs, which was fourth, 1,400 hits, which was fifth, and we allowed only 659 runs, which was second in the National League. We also had the second best ERA and strikeouts per 9 innings with a 3.66 ERA and a 9.26 strikeout rate. Now, the reason we did not win the division this year was because the Dodgers had to go and win 104 games. So kind of a bummer there. But big year, big things, look good. Now, we were unable to make it back to the playoffs for quite some time. In 2020, we had a big kind of, there was just a lot of bad signings, and then we kind of tanked in 2020, and then 2021 even harder, and we were in full rebuild mode. And then only 2 seasons after, the one of, if not the worst season that we've ever had, we found ourselves in the playoffs again. And thanks to thanks to the expanded playoffs, is a little bit easier to make it. Though, actually, I believe we were the first wild card in these playoffs, so we would have made it anyway. But so we got the wild card, and we had with 84 wins, which was 5th in the National League. So no, never mind. We would not have made it. We would have had to have been 4th in the National League in order to make it. We had 746 runs, which was 7th, right in the middle of the National League. 1,359 hits, which was 10th on the lower end. And 761 runs allowed, also 10th in the National League. Our pitching was 4.48 ERA and 8.47 strikeouts per 9, which was 10th and 12th in the National League. So how did we make it this season? Well, we made it for a couple reasons. One, we made a big run towards the end of the season. If we were to look at only the second half or the last month or two of 2023, those numbers would be much, much different. They're kind of being worn down or, weighed down by the first half of the season. But also that expanded playoffs does help a ton. So after looking at all those, I wanted to look at the most recent season, 2025, where we missed the playoffs by only 3 games. We won 80 games, which is lower than any time we made the playoffs. And it was 9th in the National League, so one of the lowest. We scored 791 runs, which was actually 4th highest in the National League, and 1,377 hits, which was 5th highest in the National League. However, our runs allowed was 785. We had a run differential this year of +6, which we know isn't necessarily a deal breaker. And in doing this, we've kind of found the run differential thing isn't necessarily, the deal breaker with that. But it's interesting nonetheless. Our pitching was not very good either. 4.49 ERA as a team and 8.03 strikeouts per 9 innings, which that right there is actually not the worst that we've ever had. But it's clear that we missed the playoffs here because of our pitching, not because of our offense. You guys already knew that. I also wanted to do a quick little experiment and see, in the history of the Diamondbacks, how many times would we have made the playoffs if we had the expanded playoffs? So I start going through and I'm like, okay, 2000, we had an 85 win season. We would have managed that final wild card spot. So right now, 2000. And then I went through every single other year and we would not have made it any other time. It was just, we would have had one more wild card spot, and it was in that 1999 to 2002 period. So kind of a bummer there. The Diamondbacks seem to be, when they're not good, they're pretty darn bad. So that's unfortunate. But we're going to talk about right now the stats of the current playoff teams and compare where our current team is alongside them. And it kind of is revealing to show where we stand above a lot of them and where we need improvement. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Now, the 6 teams in the National League, I don't care about the American League. The 6 teams in the National League that made the postseason this year were the Brewers, the Phillies, the Dodgers, who were the 3 division winners, and then the 3 wildcard winners were the Padres, the Cubs, and the Reds. So I went through all of their stats, and I found the average of a bunch of them, and we're going to talk about that. So let's quickly just get one thing out of the way. Let's look at the runs scored from each of these teams. Now, I'm not going to read off every single one, but I will say the highest was the Dodgers with 825, and the lowest was the Padres with 702. The average of all 6 teams was 777 runs scored. So that is the National League playoff team average, scoring 770 runs in the year. The Diamondbacks scored 791, 21 runs more than the average, and 89 runs more than the Padres, who made the postseason. So our offense, I'm going to quickly just say that right now, is not the problem. We will talk about things that we need to do to make sure that that continues to be the case, but the rest of these, I'm not really going to talk about offense, because I went through a bunch of other offensive stats, and it's basically the same. We are right up there with the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Brewers. So If offense was the only indicator, we would have been in the playoffs pretty easily. But that's not the only indicator. That's half of it. So let's talk about the other half. Runs allowed. Now, the highest runs allowed came from the Dodgers, actually, with 683 runs allowed. The lowest came from the Padres, who gave up 621. So pretty wide range there. The average of between the 6 teams ends up coming out to 652 runs allowed. For run differential, just so you get paint the picture, the Dodgers had a run differential of 142, and the Padres had a run differential of 81. The highest run differential was from the Brewers with 172. They scored 172 more runs than they allowed, and the lowest was the Reds, who had a run differential of 35. So kind of just squeezed in there. The average run differential for playoff teams in the National League was 118 runs scored over runs allowed, or not over, but minus. The Diamondbacks allowed 785 runs. Again, the average for runs allowed was 652. That means they allowed over 130 runs more than the average and 102 runs more than the highest team with runs allowed. Their run differential was a positive 6. Like I mentioned earlier, they only scored 6 more runs than they allowed, which is not great. That's kind of not good. Now the Reds had 35, so it's not like they were far behind them. And if the last 5 games had gone differently, that number would be probably closer to 35. But that puts the Diamondbacks at the 12th lead, or I guess that puts them in 12th for runs allowed. So they allowed the 4th most runs in the National League. So the 4th most runs that they got and the 4th most runs that they gave up. So there you go. Now let's look at a few other stats. Wins. The most wins by any team in the postseason was 97 from the Brewers, and the lowest was 83 from the Reds. The average of all 6 teams came out to 92 wins. We had 80, which was only 3 below the Reds, which we would have needed another one in order to advance because they had the tiebreaker on us. But still, so obviously that's the most important one. So I didn't make that one. Let's look at the ERA. The best ERA in the postseason was the Brewers at 3.58, and the worst ERA was the Dodgers at 3.95. The average of all 6 teams was 3.77. Our ERA was 4.49, which was the 12th, ranked 12th in the National League, 12th out of 15. Now here's one that I read an article this morning about quality starts, and it was looking at how many quality starts each team had, and that was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this segment specifically. I thought that was a really interesting idea. But what I found was it was kind of interesting. There doesn't seem to be a huge correlation here, actually. For example, the most quality starts any team had was the Phillies with 84 quality starts. More than half of their season was a quality start from their starting pitcher. The least came from the Brewers, who had the best record in baseball at only 46 quality starts. So that's kind of interesting. I don't really know what to make of that. And their ERA was 3.58, the lowest of any National League team. So maybe the quality starts either it's just random, or maybe you don't want your starting pitcher to go more than 6 innings. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a good thing, but Anyway, the average between all of them was 60 quality starts between all the playoff teams, and we had 68. So our starting pitching, at the very least, had would go deep into games. So relatively speaking, not even like crazy, but a bit above average. We had the 6th most in the National League quality starts. So kind of interesting. I did want to talk about one of my new favorite stats right now, which is WHIP, which is basically just how many people got on base per inning. And the lowest was the Cubs, who only allowed 1.18 runners per inning. The highest was the Dodgers at 1.26. These are all very close, by the way. They're all like 1.26 to 1.18. Like they're all within like a few, like that's within 8. The average was 1.22, and we had 1.32, which put us at 11th in the National League. So we were allowing base runners. And that's what was going on there. We did not allow, like, the number of home runs that we allowed. I don't have that written down here, but the number of home runs that we allowed wasn't super high either. So it was just we were letting people get on base. And as Moneyball and Brad Pitt have taught us, that's how you win baseball games. You get on base. Let's look at blown saves real quick. The most blown saves out of any team in the postseason for the National League was the Dodgers. Dodgers did not have a good defensive season this year, at least relative to the other teams in the postseason. 27 blown saves. They actually also, the Phillies also actually had 27 blown saves as well. The least blown saves went to the Padres at 16. The average is 22 blown saves, and we had 29 blown saves in 2025, which is the first in the National League. We had more blown saves than anybody else. So if we could just get that down to postseason average, that's 7 less, we would have made the postseason easily. But I don't want to get into that. We all know I don't want to play that game. Starting pitching ERA, the average was 3.75. The lowest went to the Phillies with 3.53. The highest was to the Padres at 4.07. Again, the average 3.75. Ours was 4.29. We ranked 10th this year in starting pitching ERA. Now, again, that fluctuates a lot throughout the season, and we can kind of isolate times and be like, oh, this was a super bad time that kind of skewed the numbers, or this was a really good time that kind of skewed the numbers. Ending the season, our starting ERA was much better. We ought to do an episode where we break down the timeline of 2025. That'd probably be a good idea, actually. And then relief pitching ERA, the bullpen, the worst were the Dodgers and the Phillies, who also had who tied for the most blown saves, for 4.27 ERA out of the bullpen. The best bullpen was the Padres at 3.06, which is good because they had the worst starting pitching in the postseason. And so the average bullpen ERA was 3.81. Ours was 4.82. So a whole run higher, and then some, than the average postseason team. And nearly, what was 0.6 runs higher than the worst team. So yeah, that put us at the 3rd worst in the National League. So we're seeing here, offensively, we're fine. If we can keep the offense where it is, we have nothing to worry about offensively. We're totally good. But we give up a lot of runs. We give up a lot of base runners, and we blow a lot of saves. So those 3 things we need to. We're going to talk. You know what? Hold on to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Settle down. I said settle down. Calm down. It's okay. Shh. It's fine. We are going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to talk about what to do with all this information and how we can strengthen the team where it needs it, which will guarantee making the postseason every single year from here on out. That's what we're gonna do. So stay right there. We'll be right back. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting app partner of the NBA. So first of all, things that we need to do this offseason. A big reason why our offense was as good as it was is because of Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor, two players that are no longer on the team and that were unlikely to sign again. I could see us potentially signing Josh Naylor if he accepts a 1, maybe 2-year deal, but I think that's pretty unlikely. Sorry, it's early. But I wanted to do a little Moneyball situation and see kind of what they gave us. So Suarez had a 248, a slash line of 248, 320, and 576. He hit 36 home runs while on the Diamondbacks, giving us scoring 87 runs batted in. Hitting in 87 runs. Naylor had 11 home runs with 59 runs batted in, having an average on the Diamondbacks. These are only their Diamondback numbers, by the way. Having a batting average of 292, nearly 300, and his on-base percentage was 360, slugging a bit lower than Suarez's at 447. So I took the average of the two, and this basically says if we can get two players this year, whether it's through signings or trades or prospects or whatever, if we can get two players this year that we're not including from last year, so either a big improvement or just new players altogether, these two players need to average a 270 batting average. Sorry, I forgot the word. It's early, like I said. A 270 batting average. That's what they need to average. A 340 on base percentage and 512 slugging, which means a lot of extra base hits. They need to average between the two of them 24 home runs and 73 RBIs. Now, by my best calculations, because of who we got for Suarez and Naylor, that just needs to be throughout the entire season, because we didn't really it's not like we got somebody for Suarez that immediately kind of kept going with the pace that Suarez was at, or Naylor. And so if they can hit 24 home runs throughout the entire season, then I consider that they've filled the role. They don't need to hit 36 home runs by the trade deadline in order for it to, for that to do what it needs to do. But that's a big, 73 RBIs average between two players. That's a big ask. So how do we do that? Well, for one, if Gabriel Moreno stays healthy all season long, that's a massive advantage, because Moreno, when he's here, he's good. He's clutch. He's able to get extra base hits. He gets on base very, very often, but he gets hurt a lot. And when he gets hurt, he's out for a long time. Being behind the plate, things happen. His hand breaks, and then he's out. He can't play until it heals. Same thing with Marte. He's got a lot of that soft tissue injury issues with his back or his tendons or whatever, and he ends up sitting out for a good deal of time. If we can avoid that, then that's good. And then Corbin Carroll, if he's able to stay healthy, if the three of them are able to just do what they've been doing, and they were able to do it the entire season, then that's huge. And with Moreno and Marte staying in the entire season, that would increase our offense tremendously and help fill the void from Suarez and Naylor. And then if Perdomo, who was in all season, if he's able to continue to build off of 2025 and continue this trajectory and improve off of last year, then I think that's even more influential on how our offense does. So if he's able to do that, especially as the team captain, if he's able to lead the charge in a really big way, then that will be massive, and that will help a lot of our younger players to get momentum and get going. And speaking of younger players, I'm excited to see Jordan Lawler and Blaze Alexander. I'm even excited to see Locklear, and I think that I think he's going to have a better season than he did in his brief appearance this last season. I don't expect him to be like an all-star or anything like that, but Lawler and Alexander, I expect at least sizable improvement. Lawler, if he's able to do what he was doing in the last 17 games of the season and he's able to hit consistently, then that's amazing. And if his defense improves, which I expect it will, then that's a huge plus as well. And then Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy, they need to figure themselves out. I want them so badly. Because I love Alec Thomas, I love Jake McCarthy, and I would love for them to stay here, and I would love for their offense to just get kicked into high gear because their defense is incredible. They're very, very good defensively, but their offense, they get into these slumps and they cannot get out of them. And so if they're able to figure out whatever mental block that is or whatever swing mechanic that they're struggling with, if they're able to figure that out and become middle of the road offensive players, at the very least, just average, then I'll be very happy. And that'll be very big. As long as it's not 3 strikeouts, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts every game. That would be awesome. I think as far as what we need to add, we need to sign Paul Goldschmidt. I'm kind of just the more I hear about it and the more I think about it, I'm just like, that's the thing to do. We need to sign Paul Goldschmidt. You imagine, first of all, how many Paul Goldschmidt jerseys you're going to sell. I mean, that will cement Paul Goldschmidt as a Arizona Diamondback in the minds of all the fans. That'd be such a big way to like bring the fan base back after the last 2 seasons. And if he's able to deliver offensively and he's able to really bring, something big to the table, which he very well might, then even better. But I think that would be really great. He's likely, if we did sign him, I think he's probably going to be the only major non-pitcher, though, that we sign. We might sign a few other, we might sign a backup third baseman. Hopefully we sign James McCann as our backup catcher as well. But I don't see us signing Kyle Tucker or anybody like that. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that, but I don't see it happening. I do wonder what we could get for Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy if we traded them. I don't imagine anybody would just do a 1-for-1 trade, but if somebody's like, if we have a pitcher that we're looking at, a relief pitcher or a closer or a starting pitcher, and we make an offer, throw in Alec Thomas and or Jake McCarthy to sweeten the deal. If that's what needs to be done, then I think that would be a good deal. Because what we need, as you know, is pitching. We need pitching so badly because it was not good this season, and now we're short 2 starting pitchers. We only have 3 starting pitchers. And now Ryan Nelson, he just needs to keep doing what he did. He did great. Loved Ryan Nelson. He was very consistent. Let's just keep that up. Improvement would be really great, but even not necessary. But he's going to be our starting pitcher unless we get our main starting pitcher unless we sign somebody else. Brandon Pfaadt, he needs to shave a point off of his ERA. Right, this year was 5.25. If he was able to get it to 4.25, I'd be a lot happier. In the 3s would be phenomenal, which he could. It would that'd be a breakout season. I would love to see a breakout season from Brandon Pfaadt, though. He's still very young. He's still developing. He's still learning. I think he absolutely could make that happen. And he's been healthy and he's great. I just want to see that from him. A little bit of baseball maturing, I guess, which pitchers do, and they show improvement from that. Eduardo Rodriguez, if he's able to pitch the way he pitched at the end of the season, then he's going to be worth all the money that we gave him, and we'll have him for another year after this. So If he's able to be that, then great. Then that's another consistent arm that isn't going to win every game. He'll get blown out from time to time, but for the most part, he's going to put a quality start out there. He's going to give the offense a chance to attack and get the lead early in the game, and that's, I think that needs to be the Diamondbacks' strategy. Is just starting pitchers just need to eat innings and keep them at bay. Because, I mean, not to say that we don't trust our bullpen, though. Towards the end of the season, our bullpen actually did become fairly pretty reliable. But if we're able to let our offense do its thing, then that, one, gives us a much better chance to win. But two, it gives the starting pitcher a lot more breathing room, and it makes it much easier for him to do his job. I think we need to sign Merrill Kelly. I think he needs to be one of our signings for this offseason. We need a starting pitcher. He'd almost certainly take a 1-year deal, and we wouldn't need to pay him as much as Zach Gallen. So I think Merrill Kelly is the one to go with. And I think he would, I mean, if he pitches the way he pitched last year, then great. That's good. We're good with that. But we do still need one more starting pitcher, and none of our prospects, in my opinion, are quite there yet. I do think that we'll see a handful of starting pitching prospects from the minors this season, but on our starting lineup, to our opening day lineup, I don't think any of them are quite there yet. So I think we still need to trade for somebody or sign another free agent of some kind. But if we can get our team ERA just down to, it doesn't even need to be the postseason average of 377. If it was just 4, low 4s, high 3s, that would put us right in the middle. Then our offense does what it did this year, then we're basically guaranteed a postseason spot. And so if we can just get that figured out and figure out how to avoid the just chronic injuries that seem to be happening, then there's nothing keeping us out of the playoffs. With this expanded playoffs setup, I mean, that shouldn't be hard at all. And once we're making the playoffs consistently, then we start looking at division victories, and we're going to win the division, and then we go forward from there. And as you know, you make the playoffs, anything can happen. So I don't think we need to look past the playoffs. If we can get to the playoffs, mission accomplished. So you guys, that's the show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to follow us on X and Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Diamondbacks. We're on YouTube as well as every other place you get your podcasts. If you want to see more of me, you can find more of my YouTube channels and projects at my website, slackshack.tv. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every single day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.